All right, this is week 1 in our new teaching series entitled Overcoming Depression. Overcoming Depression. And I'm very excited about this teaching series. Depression is a word that at times is taboo in the Christian camp. And it's definitely taboo in certain circles. And while I don't want to make a god or an idol out of it, the Bible is clear and speaks about depression. When you read the scriptures, you'll see how Moses experienced depression. Jonah experienced depression. Jeremiah experienced depression. David experienced depression. Paul experienced it at times, feeling depressed, feeling overwhelmed. So we want to talk about this. We want to look at it biblically. Even the Bible talks about how he'll give you a spirit of joy to counteract the spirit of heaviness. So we want to take a biblical approach to this. And also, I'm really excited about just laying out in our opening session some of the stages to depression and some of the things to be mindful of. So you know we like word pictures, so let's talk about our word picture for this one. And we've used this before, but if you can imagine a pillow, and let's say you take an iron and you put the iron on the pillow. If you only leave the iron on the pillow for a day, when you pull the iron off, the pillow will be pretty resilient and come back to its normal form. But if you leave the iron on the pillow for a period of, let's say, 3 or 6 months, when you pull the iron off, the pillow will be depressed, or we might say it's beneath normal levels. And that's a good word picture of what depression is in our life. Depression is, this is important, when emotions, we carry around or internalize emotions over a protracted period of time. Now, remember, the word depressed means to be beneath or below the normal that's considered, beneath the level that's considered normal. This is critical because any aspect of your life that you deem is beneath the level that you consider normal can be a candidate for depression. If you think you're making a below average income, if you think you're working in a below average job, if you feel like compared to your reference group, you're experiencing a below average season, anything that you feel is depressed or beneath the level that you think it should be can be a candidate for depression. So we really want to be a little methodical about thinking about this and be systematic and not just be scared away because it's a clinical term, or not be scared away because the church at times doesn't often have much to say about this. Or the church at times can make you feel like if you had enough faith, you wouldn't be experiencing it. So let's unpack this a little bit. One of the primary definitions of depression is anger turned inward. Anger turned inward. Now, I use the word anger because of all the emotions that we experience, anger is the emotion that consumes the most energy. Now, you really have to get this. The best word picture for this is, I love to work out. I do the life cycle. I'll do the elliptical. But let's use the treadmill, for example. If you were to get on the treadmill, if we had everyone in this room have a little treadmill contest. Some of you could do it for 2 minutes. Some of you could do it for 10. Some of you could do it for 30. Those of you who are in good shape, maybe you could do it for an hour. But at some point, you would become physically exhausted. Depression is when you exercise your emotions, your negative emotions. And if there's not a healthy outlet for them, those negative emotions cause you to become exhausted, just like you would become physically exhausted on the treadmill. So depression stems from emotions that are turned inward, that we keep turning over and over and over and over and over again. And just like we consume physical energy, negative emotions consume emotional energy or emotional capital. Now, this is powerful. God is so smart. This is why God says, when he talks about prayer, he says, first forgive if you have aught against someone else, forgive them. Why? Because he doesn't want you coming to him in a weakened state. Now think about this. Think about negative emotions. Obviously, unforgiveness, hurt, anger, bitterness, fear, insecurity. These are all emotions that if we don't deal with properly, we will turn inward. And, I was thinking about this on the cab ride over. It's so obvious why people don't talk about it as much, although it's fairly well researched, but male depression, because men don't talk about things that they're dealing with. So they're turning all of those negative emotions inward, and then they're getting on the emotional treadmill. And then they're exhausted, or they age prematurely, or they die prematurely. So it's critical, and I want to really hammer this home, it's critical that as we begin this discussion, you identify and I identify those negative emotions that potentially are consuming a lot of emotional capital. Because the key is to counteract them. So one of the steps right off the jump to counteracting them is developing an attitude of thanksgiving and an attitude of praise. Now, those words sound so trite, praise, okay, thanksgiving, okay. It's almost like we use them and it's like in one ear and out the other. But I want you to think about it a little bit differently. If you're like me, at times when you've gotten down the most, it wasn't because there was one cataclysmic thing that happened to you, but it's because little thing after little thing after little thing, unexpected bill, negative toxic relationships, and all of a sudden, slowly but surely, they chip away. Each one's consuming a little bit of emotional energy, then a little bit of emotional energy. If you're like me, have you ever noticed when you've had some of your worst drag-out fights, when it's in the aftermath, you fall asleep on the couch or you're exhausted? Because that emotional energy, that emotional treadmill was being used up. So it's so critical for all of us to be conscious, to make the habit of expressing gratitude, because gratitude, for lack of a better word, produces empowering energy. It's acknowledging that things are working in your favor. It's keeping yourself aware of the fact that things could be worse. It's keeping you aware of the fact that God's involved in your circumstances. And at times, we're all looking for the big event to give God kudos for. Boaz, debt cancellation, marriage, job. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's the only time you use to create positive emotions to counteract the systematic attack of negative emotions that the enemy is coming against you, you're in a deficit. Yes. So you want to make, I kid you not, I was walking, I had to move the car today, and because Mel wasn't feeling well, and I was walking up to the office, and if any of you are familiar with alternate side of the street parking, I saw the truck coming down. So this may sound crazy, but I was actually thanking God that I saw him, because then I knew when I had to go up to in the high 80s to get my car, but I brought it down to the spot where the truck had already left. So it saved me about 30 or 45 minutes because I didn't have to wait in the initial spot. Now you may say, oh, okay, that's stretching a little bit, Brother Chris, but it's just my way of saying, you know what, God, thanks. If I had left 2 minutes later, I would have sat there looking over my shoulder, wondering when the truck's going to come. And now I sat there, I could pray, I could read, I could work, I was productive. I wasn't constantly looking in the rearview mirror. Likewise, I was away this weekend, and I've made a friend at the golf course. He's a 73-year-old brother, and brother in the Lord. Walk in there, we talk a little bit. I gave him some of our tapes, gave him a couple of books that Pam and I wrote a while back. And just as I'm getting ready to go my wild, he goes, you know what? We're brothers in the Lord. You go out there and you play. Just little things. But you want to make because you know what? You note the negative things that happen. Yeah. You're like, oh man, if this computer freezes up one more time, if I get on another train with no seat that's hot, I mean, systematically, you can identify the things that consume negative emotion. And if you're not counteracting or counterbalancing it, it's no wonder that you're emotionally exhausted.